Welcome! In this video, I continue my series of analysing engagement in video games. I've already looked at static maps versus procedurally generated ones. Today, we're trying to answer the question of what makes upgrades in our games fun and engaging. And are simple stat increases good enough for the modern gamer now? A quick shout out for these podcasts, they really help me with my research into the games industry, links in the video description, but let's get started. This is Precognition, an upgrade in Warhammer Darktide. We're going to analyse it based on how it worked in those first 10 months from the game's launch. In month 11 it got some other changes, and we'll look at them later in the video. But for the first 10 months it provided a minor conditional damage bonus for 2 seconds after a successful dodge. In Darktide, dodging is a manual action you perform. The Precognition icon appears at the bottom left of the screen, letting me know I have 2 seconds of increased damage when I land a critical hit or a weak point hit. And on the left we have Precognition, and it's activating pretty much non-stop. On the right hand side we don't have Precognition. This is a stat boost upgrade rather than an exotic upgrade that we're going to look at in a second. But what notable difference can you discern between the left hand side and the right hand side in these two examples? Keep that in mind as we now jump into Deep Rock Galactic with the Breachcutter. On the left it's firing normally with no upgrade. On the right we have an upgrade called Spinning Death. We are seeing some obvious differences straight away with this upgrade in use. And today we're talking about what makes an upgrade feel good to use and improve our engagement with the game, not so much about whether it's subjectively good or bad. Before trying to understand what makes an upgrade feel good or not to use, let's try and understand why games have got upgrades in them in the first place. They can help players with overwhelm, introducing mechanics gradually as they progress. They can also increase power levels towards the harder content in the game, incentivize us players to keep pushing forward, and they can be rewards for completing content. These next points are more of the focus of this video, as perhaps they resonate more with the player and their engagement of the game. We're talking about upgrades that provide a noticeable impact on our gameplay and those new strategies with build choices to go with them. These then open up new playstyles that can fulfill a power fantasy whilst rewarding clever thinking and skillful play, and hopefully looking absolutely awesome and being really fun to use. I think upgrades that score really highly on this list are generally onto a winner as far as the potential for player engagement goes anyway. Let's come back to the Spinning Death upgrade, or Overclock as they're named in Deep Rock Galactic, and go through this checklist. I think Spinning Death has an immediate impact on gameplay and for sure allows for new strategies. We might want to change our build to get further benefits out of this upgrade. And Spinning Death is a playstyle many will enjoy and might fit perfectly with their specific style or how they want to enjoy the game. Fulfilling a power fantasy I think can be argued as we mince up our glyphids here, and it definitely rewards clever thinking and skillful play. Looking awesome is a matter of opinion, but you can't argue that the player and other teammates can most certainly tell it looks different. Players will instantly be able to tell what you are using and change their tactics accordingly. And finally we have the fun and engaging part, and this is debatable also, but I'm sure there are plenty of people who absolutely love this overclock and find it extremely fun to use. And we can see that Spinning Death scores quite highly on our checklist. It has special properties compared to the base gun, it is an exotic and unique upgrade. And now let's look at Precognition, which focuses on a stat change rather than something unique or exotic. And to be fair to Darktide, I've cherry-picked Precognition because it's one of the worst offenders in the game. And Darktide continues to have updates to try and address the launch issues such as Precognition that we're examining right now. And we're going to have more on that at the end of the video. Also in Darktide, weapons receive 2 major upgrades called blessings, meaning Precognition is only one half of the power level here. And so I've included a second blessing that complements Precognition as we progress through this checklist now. Initially you might say there's no notable difference, but that damage boost, even though it's situational, can actually help us hit certain breakpoints. So I guess we could potentially see some impact on our gameplay, but it's going to be very few and far between. New tactics are not really used here, as you should probably be dodging all the time, and therefore it doesn't really change our strategy. Build choices can loosely be argued, more crit chance would help, but then that's true in most cases for the majority of our games. Better dodge capabilities improves these blessings, and so you could consider building around dodge and then using these blessings in conjunction with that. And when it comes to fulfilling a power fantasy, I think it's completely missed. You barely see the difference in game. Rewarding skillful play though, I think we can tick. Dodging is important in Darktide, and this gives you a boost for doing that. To look awesome when used? Absolutely not. No visible change at all, apart from a very small chance of hitting a breakpoint, and any allies will never realise you're using this blessing. And you can see straight away, this is not a fun and engaging blessing. It's unlikely you're even going to notice that it's actually on. And if you could actually believe it, Precognition had its damage buffed since launch. The damage range used to be between 2 and 5%. Can you imagine grinding to get this weapon and be rewarded with a 2% boost on successful dodge? And a name change to Finesse in a recent patch does little to hide the lack of notable impact this upgrade provides. It's technically true that these blessings do impact our gameplay, but it isn't noticeable, and it definitely isn't fun or engaging for the player. People won't consciously go through a checklist like this to decide if an upgrade is fun or not, but they will subconsciously. And if they feel aggrieved, cheated or disappointed, they are going to let their feelings be heard. Just like in this Steam post, or this other forum post from Seth, where they describe Precognition as being beyond useless. Sometimes bad upgrades can just be ignored, like in Deep Rock Galactic, if you don't like a certain overclock, you just don't use it. But when the RNG provides you with a bad upgrade and that has the potential to ruin a weapon or force you to grind more, it's going to negatively impact the player and their engagement of the game. Before we look at what makes an upgrade good or not, we need to quickly define primary upgrades versus minor ones. Upgrades can be incredibly powerful to our engagement in a game, with even minor boosts keeping us chasing additional levels, just like in the first Remnant from the Ashes game. Our brains love getting rewards, and developers will try to ensure they scratch that itch as often as possible. But not every upgrade can be a uniquely designed experience, and we're going to look at why in a minute. Instead, game developers will often use minor upgrades to fill in the gaps between some of the more unique and exotic ones later on. And some games have evolved this further, with nodes being used, where you have a bunch of minor upgrades which then surround what I'm calling a primary upgrade. This keeps us chasing each level, but we know at some point we're going to get that primary upgrade as a reward for our perseverance. But we can't simply just have minor power boosts each time or minor upgrades. We need those major ones to really keep us engaged and impact our gameplay. And it's also not as easy just to say that primary upgrades are bad if they are only stat increases instead of something exotic, because stat changes can hit our criteria for impactful upgrades also. I don't know what your thoughts are, but something like plus 25% critical hit chance on an item feels like a good primary upgrade even if it's not an exotic one. And even 40% faster reload speed or movement speed can feel like they have a place as primary upgrades, depending on the mechanics in the game. But there is a line to be managed and understood. 40% extra ammo reserve or heal an additional 25% and similar stat upgrades don't feel as impactful and are definitely not in the same category as, say, critical hit chance. This is a grey area, one that developers may get right or wrong because it's really subjective. And as the game goes through development cycles and iterations, many aspects of it will change, with the potential for upgrades that were good in an early build start to feel lackluster when it ships, if not caught and updated. And we can see just how much can change. 2 days before I was going to release this video, Darktide has buffed the top damage on Precognition to 60%. That is a massive increase. So what do I think makes a bad primary upgrade? Well, I think they are ones that score low on my checklist, with the major two issues being if it lacks that notable impact on gameplay and it doesn't look cool or awesome when it's used. These 2 points I think can personally carry most of the other bullet points with them. And players can absolutely fall in love with an upgrade if it looks cool and fits their playstyle. And I'm sure we've all been guilty of using an upgrade that we know technically isn't as good as something else, but it just feels so good to use and it's fun. That is player engagement. And when we tell a friend why they should buy a game, it often starts with something like, you can do this super cool thing, like unlocking the ability to throw items and people in control. I'm absolutely certain that nobody who plays Warhammer Darktide has turned to their friend and said, "Oh my god, it feels absolutely amazing when you get 2 seconds of conditional damage after achieving a situational action with Precognition." Throwing stuff in control feels good when you get it because it has an immediate impact on our gameplay and on our power level. It also looks cool and it's fun, something most stat boosts will struggle to achieve. So how do exotic upgrades impact game design? And of course it's going to take longer to develop them, requiring vision and a great understanding of the mechanics in the game whilst thinking about how it will function and look. Simple stat increases are far easier to design and create, and they are likely going to be easier to balance as they generally have little impact on the game. Increasing the top damage of Precognition from 5% to 10% was likely quite easy to do and easy to evaluate the impacts of that balance going forward. Changing spinning death to function in a different way because it's not achieving your goals might be a lot harder to achieve. With the data harder to analyse, potentially requiring playtesters' feedback to really find out whether it's fun or not. But boring stat upgrades are a double-edged sword. Yes, they are easier to create and balance, but this is because they have far less impact on the game, and that likely means the player does not have as much fun and probably less engagement with it. Unique, exotic, and cool upgrades will undoubtedly take more development resources, but I personally think it's worth it, even if we gamers get a smaller selection of upgrades to choose from. I think less can actually be more. I would be happier if Darktide had less blessings, but each one had more of a unique feel that impacted gameplay. The fun would then be discovering cool combinations of those two blessings, trying to unlock that awesome power boost, or just to discover a cool way to play that you enjoy. And I know it's a scary concept for a developer to reduce the total amount of upgrades in a game. Especially in the case of Darktide, where so much of that perceived player engagement is the grind to get these weapons in the first place, simply praying for good RNG to deliver you a weapon with the blessings and the right stats. And reducing the amount of those upgrades in game might make the developer think players will disengage quicker once they get them, a really valid concern. But for myself, and I think, and I absolutely hope that many of you feel the same way, that you really engage in a game when there is freedom and desire to experiment with awesome different upgrades. Using your creativity, ingenuity, and desire to discover a better build or an ingenious build, or just simply one that really fits with your own unique playstyle. For myself, that is an extremely powerful driving factor in my continued engagement with a game. And it's what I think real player engagement actually is, not artificial engagement created with grinding mechanics to keep us playing for longer. And Darktide is already trying to fix some of the issues I've raised in this video. In October 2023, the skill trees had a massive change, going from the often rudimentary simple choices you had before to instead have more player focus on that choice and freedom of expression. In my mind, the more player choice we have that really impacts gameplay, our desire to experiment and discover interesting playstyles, will only increase the chances players will have more fun, and at the end of the day, game developers need to understand that fun is what makes a game engaging. That's what I think anyway. I'm sure you will let me know in the comments below if you agree or not. Like the video if you found it interesting or want more people to find it, and thank you so much for watching.